We're going to call it to order. And Secretary, will you give us a roll? That's for the roll call?
Ms. Ryan? Ms. Hallett?
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher?
Here. Okay, before we get started, is there any public comments before we go? Hearing none, we'll continue on. We need to approve some minutes. One is for October the 13th, or October 4th, I'm sorry. Anybody like to make it
I will make the motion to approve the minutes
as written?
as written.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. We'll have a vote.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Hallett?
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher?
Yes. Okay, we have one more, December 6th, 2021.
It's not on there?
I'll make a motion to accept that as presented.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Hallett?
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher?
Yes. Now we go on. Okay. Can you, Lawyer, can you read the quasi-judicial to us?
I sure will. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Heritage Preservation Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. At this time, I'd ask if anyone on the board has had any ex parte communications regarding this topic. Seeing none, has anyone on the board have any conflict of interest with this application? And there is none. At this point, anyone that's going to testify regarding this application, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you. Before we start, I will just let the applicant know, obviously you see there's only 3 members of the board. There should be 4. The 4th one's not here today. In order to get your application approved, you do need 3 votes, so you need all 3. You do have the option of referring this to another meeting or going forward with the 3 that are here.
And this is Pat. Mark, I would like to ask you if you have the PowerPoint for the first item. We can't locate it on the laptop. Thanks. Go ahead.
We have no objection. We'd like to proceed with this meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Once Pat gets her PowerPoint, we'll be ready to go.
Okay, we'll continue on. We'll start with the application 2232. This is on 160 Reed Avenue. This is Reed Street. This is a replacement of a roof on a contributing structure. Pat, would you like to give us a brief? Oh,
Yep.
get that going
Staff
first.
will go first.
Okay. So we're discussing 160 Reed Street.
Application 2232. Just to show you the location and context of the property. Here it is with the local and national historic district overlaid. It's right there at the edge. So the applicant is seeking a certificate of approval to remove the existing metal roofing and replace with a standing seam roofing, metal roofing, install a 1/4 inch recover board on all balcony decks, and install a GAF hydro stop system on all decks. And the style of this building that was known as a Glorious Church and also a First Baptist Church is Mission. It is a contributing structure. This is just showing an aerial view of the roof, the existing roof. The house was recently sold, so I got some really great pictures off of Realtor.com. And then you can see from the back. And this just shows kind of the overall context in the rest of the neighborhood. This is the survey, the most recent survey we have of the property. And your standards for review that you need to look at, all of them, but most particularly the neighborhood and district context, the roof shape and texture, architectural features, adherence to the period of construction, and adherence with the Secretary's guidelines. And I will say, the Florida Master Site file for this property states that it has a shingle roof, but I was able to pull up some historic photos where if you zoom in pretty closely, you can see that there's a lot of texture on that roof, indicating that it was likely originally a tile roof. This comes from our design review guidelines manual. If all of the roofing is removed, it needs to be replaced with something similar to what was there. In fact, the roofing that's on there right now is not clay tile, it's a metal coated, stone-coated metal tile. But it gives the same look of that mission-style roofing, that barrel tile. And you can see right here in the guidelines manuals, it's one of our examples of what would not be appropriate is to replace a slate roof with a standing seam metal roof. So replacing a barrel tile with a standing seam metal roof would not be appropriate. So some additional background on this property. It's been under renovation for quite some time. Since 2013, there was a certificate of approval for partial demolition of the property. The approved plans specify the stone-coated barrel tile roofing. There was an ad valorem tax exemption on this property. It's the first property in Tarpon Springs that had this exemption granted. Extensions were granted over the time. The city has spent significant resources and man-hours and staff time getting through this project. And there's a covenant attached to this property based on that ad valorem tax exemption, which states that no changes to the exterior of the home, the way it looks, will be made without the written consent of the City of Tarpon Springs Planning and Zoning Department, and that the owner and whoever comes along next, it's not the original owner who signed this covenant, they will abide by the rules of these covenants, which is to maintain the historic look and structure. So for some additional information, here are some other mission-style examples in the city of Tarpon Springs, and you'll note that the barrel tile is prominent on all of them. Mission style is typically pretty basic, but where it gets its endorsements is from the texture and the simple shapes. And that roof really is symbolic or typical of a mission style. So staff would recommend that you deny this based on the evidence that I just provided.
Thank you very much. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, the applicant, you want to give us a presentation?
Yes, good evening. We prepared printout presentations to pass out to the board as one for the record as well as one for the city. So with your permission, we'd like to distribute those now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have multiple copies. I believe I have 6. If you need an additional, I have an additional.
You have one more for staff?
I printed 6 and I need to keep one, so I gave 5. Okay, we have an additional. And I can certify that these are all exact copies, and in the bottom right, I'll be referring to page numbers to the extent that you can find it easier. Good evening, I'm attorney Michael Steffen, and I'm representing Tony Marteri on this application. As you've heard presentation from the city, we're going to go over some additional facts that we believe that are prudent to the basis of this application. Starting with page 2, we just wanted to outline some of the evidence that we'll be presenting this evening. The current existing roof is infeasible to repair. It has constant roof leaks.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. Pat needs to be able to follow along also. Do you have one more, or?
We need the attorney to be able to follow along as well. You only have to
Can I
learn.
borrow yours until the clerk, I'll borrow it.
Yeah, I can follow with him.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I can switch to digital if you need me to. If you just
Do
give
you
me-
have a digital? 'Cause
I have one on my phone. I could do
Do
the
you
same
want to,
thing.
is it an iPhone? You can airdrop it to me?
I'll make sure she gets this one way back. That's fine. That'll-
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
And I'm happy to turn mine into the record afterward if that would appease the board. So I'm on page 2 under the preservation shall review. First thing that we'd like to address is the feasibility of the current roof that's on there. The city indicated in their response to our application that they believe that the roof could be repaired. We're willing to proffer testimony from Aries Roofing as well as the general contractor that's repairing the inside that this roof is unrepairable for a variety of reasons. It suffers constant roof leaks as well as what we would deem an unpermitted and improper installation. Later in the presentation, you'll see pictures to account for that. Additionally, constantly there's water flowing from above. Even after replacing some of the drywall on the inside, the water still leaks. And I'll be proffering testimony from Aries Roofing that can attest that this roof cannot be repaired. We also intend to show the history over the structure over its lifetime. We believe that it's important to see the natural state of it as it was presented in the slides from the city, but there was also a full demolition besides the front exterior wall, and we provided pictures in the packet that we'll get to shortly. We also provided photos of the current state. We believe that the photos that the city chose to use in their presentation are slightly biased, as those photos were taken from a drone, and one of the requirements is that the roof blend in with the natural surroundings. The majority of the roof, if you were to see it standing in front of the structure, cannot actually be seen. Only a small portion of the bell tower and the ridge lines are seen. So when you observe the photos that the city provided, they're from a heightened view. So unless you're flying over in a helicopter, you would never see the totality of this roof structure. And we noticed in the city packet there wasn't an eye-level view, and we provided that for you as we go through the presentation. And ultimately, our goal is to show that this roof would be consistent with the architectural and historical aspects of both the entire historic district as well as that specific place. Moving on to slide number 3. I'll be introducing 2 experts this evening. One is Stephen Hausch, who is the VP and owner of Aries Roofing, as well as Matt Selby, who's the owner of SPF Construction, who's dealing specifically with the interior work to the home. As indicated in the city's packet, number 5 just shows you generally where this property is located. It's at the end of Reed Street. I'm sure you've probably passed it multiple times as you're driving. It sits in quite a large lot, and at one time it was part of a larger compound, but it was split out, meaning that it now is its own parcel ID. We also found on page 6 the photo from 1920 in the Florida Archives. As you can see, this is a little bit more blown up, so you can get an understanding of what it used to look like. Following that, we were able to find something which we believe to be from the 1930s. That's just a different angle of what the church looked like that period of time. And as you can see, the front exterior wall does block the type of roofing that was there at the time. And we believe, contrary to the city's opinion, that that was just a shingle roof. And we have some photos prior to the repair of the dwelling that we'll get to later that show that. So we believe we can back that up. Additionally, on slide number 8, there's a side view to which you can clearly see at that time you were unable to see what the type of roof structure was. There was no overhang, and it potentially was a flat roof. We went back in time to 2007, which is the earliest photos from Google, and we kind of built a presentation based on how the building changed over time. So starting with slide number 9, as you can see, Google Earth has a good front shot photo from 2007 when the building was in disarray. Around that time, based on the historical documents, there was a submission from the prior owner, Mr. Beckel, to the historical structure form to the state of Florida. And as you can see, we'd like to point out on slide number 10 that the roofing material at that time was listed as composite shingles. So there was no indication in the original application to the state that this was ever a tile roof based on the evidence that was provided. And this was submitted to the state and can be found in cross-reference with that. Slide number 11 just gives you a little bit more of detail as we go into the year 2011, as well as a rear view from 2011 on slide 12. As we progress to slide 13, it clearly shows the overhead roofing structure from 2014, which shows a flat roof and a shingle roof that is located there. I want to also point out to the board this evening that, as you can see, the bell tower at some point lost its top. I don't know when that happened, but it had no roof to begin with. As we move to 2015 on slide number 14 and 15, you can really get a sense of what the demolition permit was when this was undertaken. For lack of a better term, there was nothing there. As you can see in slide 15, the rear clearly shows that the only thing that was left was the exterior wall to the front, not even the sides. This was a tremendous undertaking, and it can be seen extensively if you were to go look at the application process, but this is not a rehabilitation of a building. Essentially, all that was left was a facade. And throughout 2015 into slide 15 and 16, you can see there was no roof on the structure. Later, upon completion of the structure in 2019, we believe that this accurately reflects the view that you would have from the front of the building even today. As you can see, standing at eye level, and this person obviously took it from a car, you cannot even see the red roof that was on during this time period. 99.9% of people are not going to fly a drone over and look at the topography of a roof. And that can be later established in 2021 on slide 18. And again, this is a good picture of a realistic view and a realistic approach as to what you would see if this board walked out there today. The rear photo in 2019 does show a little bit more if you're looking at it from a specific angle, and we want it to be fair and not only pick and choose photos. We want to be realistic. But as you can see, the ridge line and just a portion of the bell tower is what you'll see on slide 19. The current roof that is on there, and I brought a piece that I'd like to admit into evidence. And if the board would like to feel it, I think it's important to see kind of what's installed. This piece, for context, was actually kept in the garage for the last 5 years and wasn't subjected to the massive amount of wear and tear that was on the roof itself. I kind of want you to see what it's built out of, and I can have Stephen come up here and explain to you further. But the one thing that is important, if you could just run your hand across it, you'll feel that it's very granular and it breaks down over time. These granules can go down into the street and into the wastewater and all kinds of nasty things. So this is not something that's recommended for that type of building so close to the water. And again, we can have the expert testify to it. Additionally, this type of roof requires thousands of holes and screws to be mounted on the roof, whereas the other approach that we propose eliminates that and would prevent leaks. The cost of insulation as opposed to the standing seam is quite higher for this, as the labor cost is higher, and it fails over time. As we get further into the presentation, you'll see the current state of the roof really shows the deterioration that this roof had over a 5-year period, not over its lifetime of 20 years. The roof is decayed, breaking pieces, and this is also very fragile. To the extent that you wanted to go up there and inspect the roof, you have to walk very carefully because you will, in essence, destroy the undercoating of this roof. This roof allots for a 20 to 30 year lifetime warranty. However, it's not even holding up for 5 based on the positioning that it has there. And it also grows algae and mildew, which require constant cleaning as well as chemical treatments to fix. So I'd like to move this into evidence if you all would like to handle it. I didn't pre-mark it, but we'll just call it Positioners Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
So the benefits of the proposed roof is that it's more energy efficient, as well as doesn't contain those granules / pebbles that would run off into the bayou potentially. There's no chemicals, and it has the highest hurricane rating. It has less of an installation time, and it's set to last for up to 50 years, which we believe is important as we don't want to make another material change to a historical building. It's digitally measured for an exact fit, so we know that it's specific to that dwelling unit. And it's also a dramatically reduced cost as opposed to what the city has recommended to put up there now. On slide 21, I thought it was important to note that the prior contractor that was involved during the application period for the reduction ad valorem cost appears to be out of business. His name is featured prominently throughout all of the permits. The permits are very hard to follow that was done. There was a general permit that was approximately $463,000, but it's unclear as to what specifically was done, but clearly there was a lot done at that point. On slide number 22, I just provided a photo to the board to be able to see what exactly you have in your hands as far as the roofing material that's on there now. Slide 24 shows you in a bigger panel how it would be installed, and that kind of gives you a depiction as to how that was placed. As we move on to slide 25, these photos were taken just last week. You can see that the roof is already starting to deteriorate, specifically in the bottom right-hand corner of the skylight. There's panels that have broken off. There's mold and algae, as well as some browning and staining that's ruining the color of the roof itself. That's reiterated as well on slide number 26. But most concerning is what's listed on slide number 27 here. As you can see, there's 3 screws that were not installed properly that are causing leaking as well as rusting. We believe that's the basis for the water intrusion into the dwelling. And unfortunately, that intrusion had been going on for quite some period of time. Even during the home purchase, it was recognized. Slide 28 shows that same type of construction material screwed into what is the exterior wall. Those tend to be the components that have the most amount of leaking, and we wanted to just provide that to your attention as this isn't feasible. There's a significant problem with this house with the current roof construction with the runoff, and that's depicted in slide number 29. As you can see, the water there at one time was either pooling and caused massive discoloration to the tiles. And again, I want to bring it to the board's attention, this roof is only 5 years old. To the extent that the city wishes to have this type of roof reinstalled, in 10 years, the discoloration may be permanent and you'll be looking at a black roof and not a red one. Whereas if you use a standing seam roof, that color won't fade over time. Slide 30 shows the interior leaks from above. As you can see, the water pools on the floor. This was taken a couple days after the rainstorm, and the water was still evident. Currently in the home, it has no floors. As you can see, it's just a blank canvas to be applied upon. Additionally, slide 31 shows the impact that the moisture and the water from up above has caused to the drywall. The roof, again, is not watertight, and we're experiencing this throughout the house. This is only one example. Slide 32 shows the second story. As you can see, there's a predominant leak going down the exterior wall, and there's some pooling in the middle there. That's what we're fighting up against, and that was the basis for wanting to remove the current roof and switch into the other one. This leak problem in this type of structure can cause some serious damage. Thankfully, the walls are being redone and it can be mitigated, but to the extent that this was a full dwelling of furniture and everything else, it could be very problematic. On slide 33, we took the time on 33 and 34 to look at metal roofs that are currently in the historic district. We found 38 that would fit the mapping of the historic district. We also, and I'm not going to go through every one, but as you can see, the next 38 slides, we took the time to take pictures via Google and cite them to show you that metal roofs are common and prevalent throughout the district. We believe this is a reasonable request based on the fact that other homes have this. And perhaps one of the biggest things that we found to be quite interesting is slide number 71. After going through all 37 of the dwelling units that are contained in the historic district with metal roofs, slide 71 shows the photo right outside the front window of this dwelling, right across the street and installed by Aries Roofing, is a metal roof. That person is also contained in the borders of the historic district. And slide number 72 shows a view from the bell tower, which clearly shows two houses that have metal roofs right in plain sight. In fact, one is blue. Slide 73 and 74 show the type of material that's being used. That's a sample material, and as well as a sample color. And finally, to combat some of the rhetoric that somehow this roof will be some type of an eyesore and not be thematically contiguous with the brick and the mission style. While this has not been finalized, and I have a blown-up version because this is a little hard to read, the anticipation is to spend nearly 6 figures on landscaping as well as bricking throughout the driveway. This is only one of numerous improvements that we will be coming in front of this board to do, but it's our goal to make this dwelling beautiful for the city of Tarpon Springs. And the cost of this dwelling just for the purchase price was nearly $1.3 million. It's anticipated that this dwelling will consume an additional 7 figures. This is not a light rehab, and everything is being done to standards. Feel free to ask Mr. Tony what he would like to do with it, and you can speak with him. But I think it's important to note that this is not something that's done on a shoestring budget. Again, the roof, as it stated in the application, is nearly $150,000. I think that's important. I'm willing to swear in some of the contractors if you have any questions for them relating to why it's important to replace the roof for leaking. I feel like I've done an adequate job proving that point. If you have any questions about the schematics and the seaming, we're willing to answer anything that the board may have. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any, does the contractor want to come up and give a presentation, or?
If you don't
You're
mind, I'm
just
just going
ready
to ask
for
some questions.
questions.
Yes. Stephen? Stephen is the president of Aries Roofing, and he's the one that did the initial application. He can also attest to what type of the current roof has and then what we're looking to replace, so I'll give the floor to him.
Sir, just state your name and address before you start.
My address?
Name and address. It can be your professional address.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Stephen Hausch with Aries Roofing. Our address is 401 East Spruce Street, Tarpon Springs. We've been in business since 1990 and in Tarpon Springs, going on 32 years. So we've seen this property for a long time living in the community. So the stone-coated roof that it has up there now is failing. It's leaking in multiple locations across the property. It is also losing granules going into the storm drains below, so it's not an eco-friendly roof in today's times. I know we're always looking to be green and be positive for our environment, so I would say the standing seam roof that we're proposing to put on there is eco-friendly. It has nothing that's going to run off or go into the water, so that is an important part when making this decision. Mr. Tony also has picked the highest wind uplift panel for the area. So for hurricanes, that is going to be in excess of 150 miles an hour. The system that's on there now is only warranted up to 120 miles an hour. So potentially we're gaining 30 to 50 miles per hour, which is quite a bit when we get to that zone. So those are two main reasons, the hurricane uplift, the eco-friendly degradation of the panel now. 2 points I would make that would make sense to switch to the standing seam. If you have any questions about the roof that's on there or proposing to go on there, I'm here to answer them for you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I've got a question. So, did you guys look at a clay barrel roof, which would be just as durable?
Yeah. It's durable to the fact that every roof should be durable to waterproofing if the installers put
Barrel
it.
is durable to water.
But it's not as durable as a standing seam to hurricanes because you have individual 12-inch pieces that you're foaming down. On that whole property, you'd probably have 5,000 individual pieces up there.
You know, like, I don't think any of us think that you shouldn't replace the roof, and I don't think that they meant either that the metal roof was inappropriate. I just think that they think that to the architectural style, you guys didn't show us in all these pictures that there was one standing seam metal roof on a mission style property. And I think that's kind of where we got to figure out.
Where we're sitting on that.
Well, my request to that would be that, the pitch change is changed from the historical past, so you can see very little of the roof line being 3 stories up in the air the way it is. So visually, what you guys are focusing on there, we're trying to make it as waterproof and as windproof for the longevity of the property, more so than this mission term that
What
we're
color will
using.
it be?
Excuse me?
What color is the roof?
A dark brown to tie into the window frames and
So it'll be a bronze color?
a bronze color, yes.
You had mentioned that there was part of the roof that was unpermitted. So is that a separate roof from the main roof?
Michael? They're asking about the permit.
The original permit?
For what's on there now?
You had mentioned that there was part of the roof that was unpermitted. I wasn't
so
clear
it-
which
Yes,
roof.
reviewing the application that was done by Mr. Beckel, it doesn't appear that a roofing permit was issued specifically. We looked into that in depth, and I couldn't find one. Perhaps the city can provide more information on that.
So we'll
And
just
and they
stop
also indicated on their application that initially they felt that a shingle roof was appropriate, and then at some point they switched to the 2013 plans where they put on this barrel tile that wasn't installed properly. We weren't able to find any information of inspection reports, anything like that, but it is not to what we believe is the correct standard, as it's failing less than 5 years in.
And then you said it's a 50-year warranty on the metal. What kind of metal is it? Is it aluminum? Is it galvanized? What is it?
So it's a steel base with aluminum layers. So there's multiple layers that go into making that panel, the old one. But it's a steel substrate, which rusts near coastal waters, which we're definitely there.
What my next question
The
was.
new one, the panels that we're posing is an aluminum panel 032 waterfront approved system.
So it is approved for coastal.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one question.
Oh, one question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it a problem with the salt water?
Correct. There is a problem with salt water with metal.
Right.
You have to be within a certain distance from the metal for certain manufacturers. Every single manufacturer that close, I mean, you're 100 yards from the water. So typically it's 5 miles. If anything within 5 miles, you need to have aluminum panels. So
Okay.
most of all of Tarpon Springs is a coastal application, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And just briefly, I'd like to call Matt Selby as a witness to testify as an expert.
Hi guys, my name is Matt Selby. I'm the building contractor that's helping out with this project, and I just wanted to bring up, I live at
Can you just state your address? I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you.
2102 Pelican Court, Tarpon Springs,
Thank you.
34689. Also a lifelong resident here. So we're very familiar with this building. And I just wanted to make the point that when this building is being referred to as a mission-style building, if you look at the picture that's up on the screen here at the Mears building, there are multiple buildings that have that same kind of facade in the front as the Mears that give you that idea of the mission style that do not have the tile. That's the only thing, I think when you think of mission, you're thinking of the tile. If you didn't have the tile that was on the roof already, you wouldn't even consider this to be a mission style building, especially when you look at the 2015 pictures where the entire building was removed except for the facade. There are plenty of buildings that have that little, design to it that don't have a tile roof. So I just wanted to make that point that there are plenty of buildings that do have similar designs in the area that don't have, not necessarily have the metal, but have shingles in replacement of that. I know you guys aren't arguing the fact that the roof does need to be replaced. I just wanted to give you guys my my kind of analysis. I've done some repairs from the inside, everything that I can do because of how bad this roof was, maintained and the way that it was installed, and it's impossible, except for now we have to rip it all off and pretty much all of that decking up there. It's not just, I know Michael said there was a couple screws and some things. They literally flashed this thing over the shingle or over the tile itself to where it just pools in water all on that front facade. Of this. So it's a really bad issue, and now probably 90% of the decking up there is going to have to be replaced once we rip that off. So again, it definitely does have to be replaced. I understand you guys have your concerns about the type of replacement, but I believe that this type of application will look really good for the area. And again, there's plenty of other homes that do have it. So I just wanted to bring those to your attention as well.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like an opportunity to respond. Mission styling is expressed in this structure by its gable roof and the curvilinear parapet ends, the tower, the arcaded entry porch, the round arch openings, the stucco, the casement windows, and the existing stone-coated metal tile roof that replicates the characteristic red terracotta roofs associated with the mission style. I'm also going to quote from our guideline manual. Mission structures emphasize texture and substance over ornate detail and style. The existing stone-coated roof conveys the texture that's appropriate with the mission style. I also want to note, we only have 8 mission-style buildings in the historic district. So this is one of 8, comparing 38 metal standing seam roofs on a different type of architecture. It's not comparable. I'd also like to note, you have a copy of the covenant in your packet, and the first The first item of the covenant says that the owners agree to assume the cost of the continued maintenance and repair of said property so as to preserve the architectural, historical, or archaeological integrity of the same order to protect and enhance those qualities that made the property eligible for designation. I also want to remind you that guideline 4, well, it basically states, hold on just a second, that the shape and texture of the roof shall replicate the shape, texture, and type of roof, distinguishing the building's original architecture and on structures of similar style and age within the Historic and Cultural Preservation District. So those are a couple of points I have, and we're fortunate enough to have our county historic preservation officer here today, and with your permission, I'd like to swear him in to speak on this matter.
Okay. That'd be fine.
Can we finish the presentation and yield back, or
I'm sorry. I thought
may
you
I
were done.
finish the presentation and then yield back?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is
I
that
thought you were done.
I thought you were done.
No, I apologize. So,
We're done, I apologize.
no, no,
Yes.
that's
Okay,
okay.
no,
That's
no,
okay.
continue on, please.
So the goal of this, obviously, is to provide a resolution to which we can both live with. One of the things that we had discussed prior to coming that's not in the application and that we would potentially present as a resolution is if the board would consider using the bell tower to keep consistent with the barrel roof, but allowing the stainless seam roof for the broader portion of the structure. As you can see in the photos, and it should be undisputed in the packet, the only ascertainable architectural roofing feature that we can see from the 1920s photos is that bell tower. We're going to argue about whether that's tile, barrel tile, or shingle. Obviously, the photo doesn't allow for that. But to the extent that the city or the board wishes to keep that feature in place, we would have no objection to that, as that is a very small component and couldn't leak directly into the dwelling. So we'd proffer that as a solution in closing as a happy medium to where we're at with this, to the extent that that can be done, and we believe that that can be done. Additionally, some of the constraints that we're fighting with this project, to make the board aware, this is considered a 1031 construction loan, and it has restrictions on the application of use of time. This is not something that we have the liberty of coming back to the board 3-4 times in, as it will time out and those funds will be no longer able to use and apply to the application. So we wanted to bring that to your attention, that this is done for a very specific reason. We're trying to move as swiftly and quickly as possible. That's obviously why tonight I didn't balk at the idea of trying to get 3 out of 3 votes and waiting for the 4th. We want to be as quick as possible to get this done and be within our guidelines, and I believe we're under 100 days to complete this project. So we do have a time restriction that the board probably didn't make aware. And I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay.
Did anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. Is that the
Any
end?
questions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Now that he's really done, sorry about that, I do apologize.
very good.
Staff may continue.
Okay.
All right, so I would now like to introduce Tom Schofield, the county's historic preservation officer, to speak on this.
Is he sworn?
Yeah, can we swear him in, please?
When he gets sworn, he's not. Can you raise your right hand, sir, and I'll swear you in? You're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. State your name and address before you start.
Tom Schofield. I work for Pinellas County at 310 Court Street, Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
So just to back up staff's position and communication in regards to typically your permit applications, a certificate of appropriateness, what's an appropriate architectural character-defining feature in regards to the style of the building. The mission style is the character-defining features of the mission style, as your staff person has communicated, are those barrel tile roofing materials, very typical of that mission style. A standing seam roof on a mission style building would not be typical of what's found on a mission style building. I haven't seen all the details in the packet, but as an architectural historian, I can pretty much verify that what staff said in regards to mission style is what's appropriate. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them for you.
No, not really. Okay,
Well,
okay.
can I just ask, so, like, just looking at the history of the building, so prior to 2020, 2019, I guess, is when that new roof was put on. Prior to that, I mean, what was on there? Because it's hard to tell from these pictures. Before, there was nothing on it because you have a roof.
Yeah, for a long
And
time, there
this-
was nothing on it. When they did the Florida master site file in 2009, it did have composite shingle on it. But unfortunately, we don't have any photos that you can really zoom in too well, but I did show
The one in 2014 looks like it's
The
asphalt
one.
shingle.
where,
The one that he provided in his
Point of
This-
packet.
the
for
same
record,
one
Can we
that-
get the slide number, so we have a clean record as to which one we're referring to?
Oh, I'm looking at page 13 on your deck.
She's looking at his presentation, page 13.
it's your page 13.
Thank you.
So it looks like asphalt shingle, so it just,
It was composite shingles in 2009. However, if you look at this historic photo, you will notice texture there.
yes, on the bell tower.
Got a little question about the history of this building. Okay, there seems to be a lot of work that's being done in the 2015 range and stuff like that. Who was doing that work? Was that the city doing the work, or
It was not, it was a private citizen.
it was what?
It was a private citizen.
It was a private citizen.
However, that property has benefited from an ad valorem tax exemption because of the historic nature of it and the efforts that were put in to restore it appropriately. Due to that, that is why we have the covenant with them that they will not, let me see precisely what it says here. Essentially, they're not to, the owners agree that no visual or structural alterations will be made to the property without prior written permission of the City of Tarpon Springs Planning and Zoning Department or successor agency thereto. So that covenant follows that property because of the ad valorem tax exemption that it has received.
But that follows no matter who owns it then.
No, it does not matter who owns it, it is tied to that property.
Okay, so if somebody buys that property, I'm just trying to figure out how this works. If somebody buys that property, do they get that exemption?
Yes, they get the exemption along with the responsibilities that are laid out in the covenant. And since they have attorneys, I'm sure they did their due diligence on their property.
Okay,
So they're still getting that exemption?
Yes, they will continue to get that exemption until 2027.
And if I may respond, this property was additionally homesteaded, which provided a further exemption. There's been no attempt by us to homestead the property. It's not considered homesteadable. Additionally, with the improvements of up to 7 figures, this property is likely going to reassess to 2 to 3 times its current taxable value. I believe the current taxable value on the building is $438.12. That ad valorem tax exemption is only for a portion of that. So the notion that somehow my client is not paying his fair share in property tax wouldn't be appropriate. In fact, his tax bill is probably going to double or triple as we roll into the back of 2022. It's not out yet, but I do agree the covenant goes with it, but it doesn't move sizably as the building intakes a significant amount of proceeds. If my client never purchased the building and it sat there, it would still be assessed at $438. But as I mentioned previously, the purchase price is $1,250,000. It's going to be reassessed accordingly. It's going to be reassessed accordingly as almost $1 million pours into the rehab. Specifically, the roofing permit will cause it to go up at $140,000. To the extent that other measures will be taken and we'll be back in front of the board for bricking as well as landscaping, et cetera, there will be a significant return back to the city of Tarpon Springs. My client additionally has taken time to make sure that Tarpon Springs contractors and Tarpon Springs employees are working on this. He had the opportunity to bring in other developers from outside of the city, and he chose to go with Aries Roofing and SPF Construction. So this is very much a city project that he wants to see the city build. My client lives in the city. Additionally, he owns 17 Orange Street, which is another historical building that he just recently purchased. So this is not a one-off. My client intends to make sure that this building looks good. He lives here, he drives past it, he wants it to last. Putting on this type of tile shingle won't make it last. It could leak again, and we're going to be back here trying to redo it. And again, it's approximately $150,000. So I wanted to clear up the tax notion. And again, it will go up. The covenants doesn't restrict it from moving higher.
Is that true?
It will move up, but they will still have an exemption. And I will also note that in the event of non-performance, meaning they do not receive a letter from us stating that this is permissible, they will be required to pay the difference between the total amount of taxes, which would have been due in March in each of the previous years in which the covenant was in effect, had the property not received the exemption, and the total amount of taxes actually paid in those years, plus interest on the difference calculated. So non-performance means they're going to have to pay the difference in the tax exemption. It's going to cost them some money to do that. Why not spend that money and put appropriate, barrel tile roof on it? Don't do the metal coated. Do the roof right.
Point of inquiry back to that. There is no discussion about going against the board's wishes and violating the covenants. That's not why we're here today. If we wanted to do that, we would have just done it. And frankly, that's not what we're interested in doing. We're interested in working with the city and coming to a reasonable resolution. Additionally, something that wasn't brought up is tile is approximately 20 weeks out. That would violate our 1031 ability to put the tile roof on and would cause additional tax consequences for my client. So, we're asking for a reasonable happy medium, and perhaps Stephen can attest to getting tile for one specific portion to the roof. I don't think anybody's in dispute on slide 13 that in 2014, this was a shingle roof. There was no bell tower, nothing was there. So to bolster the building to make it structurally sound for upwards of the next 50 years seems like a reasonable idea, instead of putting back a tile roof that potentially could leak, as well as taking a significant period of time and causing more damage to the structure. With every rain, more and more damage is occurring, and we're just in this endless loop of dumping more money into fixing things. I yield back to the city.
Okay, no, the reason I asked that, just for my information only, okay? The main problem we're running into right now is this style of the roof, if I can speak for myself. So this is what we have to work on a little bit, okay? Anybody else have any more questions? Okay.
If there's no more questions, both the applicant and the city do have an option to make a closing statement. They kind of have a little bit with answering your questions, but they might want an opportunity. Both the city and the applicant can do that, and then you guys may move forward.
Okay.
City, would you like to go first?
Sure. I would just like to say that this is not appropriate. This is not a matter of taste. This isn't if it looks pretty, if you like it or not. You have to go by the guidelines provided. And simply, they don't meet the guidelines. In fact, it's used as an example of what not to do in our guideline manual. So this would not be consistent with the mission style, of which there are only 8 buildings in our historic district. It's a significant contributing structure. It's part of the context. It would not fit into the context. It's just standing seam metal roof is not appropriate, and that's what you're here to determine.
Okay. Thank you.
I would ask the city to just flip back to the slide where they showed the other mission-style buildings in context. And I'll close up with that. As you can see, these photos were taken eye level with those buildings. It's unascertainable if those are flat roofs or there's a continuous mission-style tile on the roof. I think clearly in slide 17, if you were to stand right in front of this building, you would see the majority of the ridge line is not even there. The building's facade in the front eats up the ability to see the roof. So as I discussed before, no one's seeing these buildings from a helicopter or a drone. It's not interfering with what the standards of review are for the neighborhood and district context, because clearly in the photo from 1920, which was done at eye level, you aren't able to even see the roof. And at some point in time, it's undisputed that the roof was shingle. So arguably, we're making an improvement to what's already there. I'd also like to point out that while the county has testified today, he had stated that he'd never been to the property. I'm sure he's not aware of where it's even at if you ask him to walk there now, so I think that's important. We also had no notice of his appearance, which is neither here nor there. But we really truthfully believe that a happy medium to this could be the barrel style, where you can clearly see it, and it's replicated back in the photo, as well as going with a metal roof that would be hidden behind the facade in almost every direction. And we have nothing further. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, do I,
I would lastly point to their slide 19 where you can clearly see the roof. I would just point to their slide 19 where you can clearly see the roof at eye level.
thank you. Okay, is there any other comments? Okay, does the board have want to make a motion? The way we do this is we make a motion, then we discuss. Okay? Make a motion?
Right in the middle. So I'm kind of thinking,
Yeah. Know what I'm saying? Make a motion.
All right.
We can change it if you want. We need to get in discussion mode.
I make a motion to, on application 2232, to have all visible parts of this roof with a barrel roof, and the remainder of the roof can be metal as they presented. But everything that you can see from the ground
No.
has to be barrel.
Okay, hang on one second.
I
Can
think-
she do that?
I
or-
think, well, if I followed the applicant's suggestion, that would be approving their application with the caveat they placed out tonight that they were willing to put the barrel roof on
On the bell tower.
the bell tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that would be.
We have to
That's what we
specify,
were-
we have to specify, we should be able to specify what sections.
What I'm trying to find. So if that's what you're, if you like his suggestion, you would be moving to approve the application with the caveat that he added this evening.
Okay.
If not, then you're not trying to approve what he's, either the original application or the amended application.
How do we,
Okay, well,
how do we know which, because like,
what is visible and what
yeah, I
isn't?
know
We
from
can't,
the front.
we can't have a, we,
Can't
I
have
know
a
it's hard, we
discussion.
can't discuss it till we have a motion. This is hard. So someone just needs to make a motion to
Okay,
approve
make
or
a motion.
deny, and we can move forward.
I take that motion away.
Okay, all right.
well, you haven't, it hasn't been voted on
Okay.
yet.
All right, so,
Okay.
do you want me to?
Yes,
All right, I make the motion to approve based on the fact that we can designate which areas
Right.
have a clay tile barrel roof, not the existing. I think if we're gonna replace it, it needs to all go. But I just don't know how to designate that without knowing what areas are visible.
okay.
I'm trying to look at the roof line, and I really can't tell.
Okay.
Well,
That's-
you have to vote on my motion, and so.
Oh,
Okay,
you withdrew.
let's go with this
No,
motion,
I
okay? We'll have a motion to approve with the bell tower being,
I'm sorry to interrupt again. Someone needs to make a motion. You can't,
I can't make a
nobody,
motion?
nobody right now. I know, we're trying, I know we're trying, but we just need to make a motion to approve or deny.
Okay,
And then
confirm
move
and
forward
deny.
with the conversation, and then we can amend if we need to. I think that's the best plan.
I vote,
I'll make a motion to deny the 22-32 presented, and I make a motion to deny it.
okay, and you approve? I mean, you second that?
No, I don't.
Can I second that?
No. So that means now she can make, the other commissioner can make a motion to approve and see if someone will second that. This is just going to allow you guys to discuss it, and obviously the motion can fail, and we can do another motion after your
Can
conversation's
you
over.
approve?
It's 2232.
Yeah, it.
I make
if
the
you
motion
say-
to,
if you say-
I make a motion to approve 2232.
Let's back up.
Okay.
You can approve this denial, we discuss it, and then we can discuss it,
Right.
then we can
So-
discuss whether we're gonna, our views on it. And then
Second,
we can either pull this.
making a second to the motion just allows you to have the conversation, and then
Yeah,
it doesn't have to pass, because you'll take a vote and you can all deny it. but it lets you have a conversation. So
You're the only one that can.
So I have to make the motion to.
you can either second her motion so the conversation can begin. If you do not want to second her motion, then you need to make a motion to approve and hope that she seconds your motion.
See, we only have 2 people.
Oh, my God.
That's what's harder when there's a person missing.
Yeah, we only have 2 people.
Okay, I guess I'll approve it so we can discuss it.
No, not yet.
So
because she's got
you
it.
second her motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so the motion's been seconded. The motion to deny the application has a second. You now may have conversation.
Whoa, no. Okay, yeah, that's right.
You denied it.
She made a motion to deny.
Wait, motion to deny the application. That wasn't just what you, did you just second that?
No, she
No.
said, she
You
made
said
a
I had to
motion
second
to.
it so we can discuss it.
Right. That's what I'm asking. I couldn't hear you, so I don't know if you, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, we can't hear it over here. Okay, so there's been a motion to deny, there's been a second. Now you may have a conversation.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yes.
Why can't we have a total barrel roof? They're not making barrel roofs anymore, or?
They are, there's a.
You can, but it's time sequence and stuff like that is what they're talking about.
You
Okay.
can't get the product. There's a backlog of materials.
Okay,
Can
but
you-
our decision
Can you
should be-
guys, I'm sorry, can you lean forward a little bit? We
Yeah.
can't- I don't know if they can hear you, but we can't hear over here.
Our
I'm
decision-
trying to help you, but I can't hear you.
Okay.
Our decision is for the style. Okay, the style is a mission. The mission has a barrel roof as that type of roof. Okay, whether you can see it or not, you can, I have to disagree with you a little bit. I know that property very well. I walk around it, stuff like that. You can see a lot of that roof, okay, from ground level and in a lot of different positions, okay? So it's just a question of whether you want to have the barrel roof, if that's appropriate, if it's appropriate for mission to have the tin roof, the steel roof.
Trying to look for something that'll show me all these
No.
pictures, but they're all the same angle.
All the pictures there are all houses,
Yeah,
and that's appropriate for those houses,
they're just,
yeah. You have missions that have flat roofs with the terracotta highlights. This is a hip roof.
Yep.
Yeah.
there's only 7 mission
Mhm.
buildings in Tarpon. 4 are right there with barrel roofs, right?
Yeah, but flat roofs. But
But
the
flat roof.
highlights are barrel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it had.
Okay, we have to go with quasi judicial. Okay, so that's the way we have to decide.
Mhm.
Okay, does it fit the rules? Does it fit our guidelines? Okay,
I agree.
okay, so with that, what do you think?
It doesn't matter at this point because you gotta have all 3 of us to vote yes, and we're not there, so.
No,
We have to have all 3 of us vote yes for it to pass, correct?
That's correct.
No, you have to have all 3 for approval.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, for approval.
So even if I didn't approve it, 2 of you saying
No.
to deny,
We have a quorum.
No.
no, we
The
don't.
quorum is so you can
Hold it. She's got a point here.
Yeah, the quorum is so you can hold the meeting. So you have a quorum to hold the meeting. In order for the application to pass, all 3 of you have to agree.
Oh,
And that's what I
okay.
had let the applicant know ahead of time. Missing the 4th commissioner sometimes has that effect because you have to have the majority of the votes to get your application approved.
Okay, but if it's, let's say it's for denial, then if you have,
Well,
all 3 have to approve for that too?
Well, if you're approving, that's what we try to do motions as approval because it makes it more clear.
Yeah.
But if the motion is to deny it and someone disagrees, then it's not going to pass. And we are still sitting here. And so then that person would probably want to make a motion to approve because they want it approved. And then there'd have to be a vote.
Okay. So what motion's up right now?
Right now you have a motion to, I believe, a motion to deny.
Okay.
And if your conversation's done, you can take that vote and we can move forward from there.
It's just, it's hard, the piece that I'm kind of stuck on is the fact that we had a shingle roof on this. Somebody approved it. In the ad valorem or the covenant, did we specify in that it had to have a barrel-style roof?
I'll tell you, it's in the city's presentations. Let me just find it and I'll read it to you so we don't, I think it's, so let me find it. Remember what page it's on? I'm looking,
Put the
sorry.
barrel metal roof on, should be a barrel roof, correct? And then, that didn't work.
Yeah, but that is a single.
Right, so the covenant says the owners agree that no visual or structural alterations will be made to the property without prior written permission of the City of Tarpon Springs Planning and Zoning Department or successor agency thereto, herein the local historic preservation office.
That's essentially what we are.
It doesn't say it.
Okay, so let's have a vote for this, see if it passes, and then we'll go on. Sound good?
Okay, now, what motion is
Your motion for denial.
deny? So we have to have a vote on that.
That's right. Then we can make another motion to
And then
approve.
we can make another motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we'd like to take a vote for denial.
Ms. Ryan?
Make sure I say it right. I guess no?
That's correct. You do not want to deny it, correct?
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
So no.
Ms. Hallett?
No.
Miss Bill? Yes.
All right, so obviously that didn't pass.
Okay, that
So-
did not pass.
Is someone else going to make a motion to approve?
Would the floor reopen since it didn't pass?
Not usually, because they're in their conversation, it's up to them if they want to hear anything from anybody else, but normally, no. Normally, we just make the next motion and continue the conversation and get a vote. But
We'll make the next.
they are truly in charge.
Okay, go ahead.
May I just make one point? On the application for the historical structure form submission that was submitted to the state, that was on 7/19/2009, my packet number 10, it says roofing materials, composition shingle. So at one time, it definitely was, the board was aware of that, and that was made going forward. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention because while the covenant doesn't reference anything specifically as far as what it needs to be, the covenant just says, should my client wish to make a change, we have to come in front of the board, and that's what we've done. We've come in the board and asked for a change. But composition shingle was at one time contemplated with the form on slide 10. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Don't look it.
You make
You.
It's your turn.
Do it.
I just don't know how to put it to where, I make the motion to approve 2232 with the bell tower having a clay tile roof and or the suggested metal roof on the main structure.
Okay. Second.
I just want to make sure we heard it correctly. The motion to approve the application,
With the clay tile roof on the bell tower.
and the remainder, the material they're suggesting,
Correct.
they're requesting. Thank you.
Second.
I second.
Now you can discuss again.
Any more talking?
I'm not happy.
But there's lots of styles of mission. I'm from Texas. I'm from San Antonio. It's king of mission.
Yes.
So I've seen both. I've seen both. I've seen it with metal and I've seen it with clay. I've seen it with shake. So I think that there is some opportunity.
Yeah, but we are quasi judicial. Okay.
Well, I made my motion.
Okay. Okay, so let's have a vote.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Hallett?
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher?
No.
So the application is
sorry.
denied.
So that did not
For the
pass.
record, we'll reserve our right to appeal on the record.
I think we can talk about it, but I think it tells you what the procedure.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure the record was clear that we didn't
Absolutely.
lose that right.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, no, you can go before the Board of Commissioners.
Point of clarification, could we re-bring the application with the full committee?
I don't think so, because it'd be the same application that's already been.
We can deviate it
ruled
and
on.
add the bell tower.
You can always do a new application and start,
When would be the next
Over.
commission, when does the board come
that's
again?
out of my territory.
You have two options. The first is you'll get a certificate a certificate that says that the project has been denied. You can appeal that to the Board of Commissioners.
Yes, ma'am.
File that appeal within 20 days of the letter. Second option is, change the project and bring it back to HPB. If you can get it in here by May 2nd, it can be on the June 6th HPB agenda. As far as scheduling with Board of Commissioners, I'd have to get with you. That's not up to us, so that would be up to City Manager which meeting it would be scheduled for.
And City Attorney, would there be any opposition to filing both an appeal as well as a corrective application?
Well, to be two separate things, right?
Can we bring them
Yeah.
simultaneously?
Because an application
Because
would
speed
be-
is of the asset here.
The application would be a new process, a new application.
Yes, ma'am.
So the two are not related. And you
Okay,
can always
so there would be
withdraw
no
one.
objection to doing both simultaneously to see who we can get in front of
I'm wise.
first.
And you
Understood.
probably can get that answer just talking to Pat tomorrow.
I understand. Okay,
it
thank you.
easier.
Nothing further?
Right, thank you.
Oh, let's see.
Another.
Okay. Staff, do you have any comments?
We have a workshop first.
Yes, we do have our workshop session, and I do apologize, this went so long, I had no idea it was going to be going
Want these?
that long. That's, you can keep those unless, we can return them to the applicant
Oh,
if they
okay.
want them. So we do have a workshop session to hold, and we have our consultant here. This is on the Adaptation and Resiliency Plan for the city's historic district. We've had a public process going now for a couple of months. This is kind of the final kind of working session for that. And we have with us Linda Stevenson from University of Florida and Lisa Craig assisting her with this project. We'd like to go ahead and jump in, get that started, and we'll explain to you as we go how we're going to do this and try to get this moving. Thanks.
Good evening. I want to thank the board for giving us some time this evening. I know it's going to run a little later, and importantly, I want to thank the public for coming because this is a continuation of the workshop activity that we had conducted about a month or so ago. So we are back, and we're going to be revealing some results of both survey responses from the workshop community, as well as an extensive amount of work that the University of Florida has taken on in terms of survey and vulnerability assessments to flooding and sea level rise in Tarpon Springs. So I'm going to quickly go through a presentation to make sure that the HPB has an overview of the work that's been done, some of the findings in place. I know we have some people here who have participated in the workshop. You'll end up seeing some of your comments reflected in what is really some draft proposed, and I want to stress draft, goals and objectives. So we'll just get started. Oh, so what we're looking at right now, just going back a minute, community values survey. This is something we sent out to the community, and we also passed out during the workshops. And the information that came back really was something that's going to help us with prioritization of both adaptation strategies for the historic districts, as well as understanding what places really matter to the community. So this is just a sampling of some of the questions. Obviously, description of the attitude of individuals toward flooding and extreme events here in Tarpon Springs. 72% say it's a serious problem, so that's good to know since we were brought on to actually try and address this problem. So it's a consistent concern for the community. In terms of those who've experienced nuisance flooding, that's that sunny day flooding that you get, not necessarily associated with anything other than a very high tide. So 70% of respondents had said yes, that they had experienced that. 70% of respondents also said that they have experienced extreme coastal storm events. And so it's pretty consistent that, again, we understand there's an issue that needs to be addressed. Other hazards that cause a high level of concern beyond just those flooding-related events is obviously high wind events, which can happen just on their own or with hurricanes. So we'll be looking and talking about some resilience strategies moving forward to address those issues. Red tide as another concern, drought and extreme heat fell behind those. Now, this is really interesting, and this is a little more unique to Tarpon Springs than any other community I've worked with. It's felt that the responsibility for protecting property, and when we say property, it's private property, it's public property, against flooding events in Tarpon Springs rests primarily with the city, the county, and the state of Florida. Property owners actually fell less. So property owners do not at this point have an understanding that this is something that they have to address with their own properties. So this is something we want to kind of work on and give solutions for to property owners moving forward. A number of those individuals don't know or aren't quite sure who they call in a disaster. So again, it's about public awareness, education, giving them what they need to have, both as property owners and residents of the city, to understand what it is they need to be aware of in the case of a disaster. In terms of a list of locations, types of uses, places that are really critical in recovery after a particular disaster event, and then oftentimes in better being prepared prior to disaster striking. The number one was very telling: grocery and convenience stores. I think we don't want to be without food. In the instance of a disaster, we want to see those services brought back. Transportation systems, getting around, is obviously very critical. Government offices, going in somewhere where you can get assistance. Schools and educational institutions fell next. And then retail, restaurants, bars, and cafes. Obviously, the local economy is very dependent on those resources being available to them. So those tended to be the top 5. Sorry. Okay. And then we asked people what actions either they have taken or they would consider taking in order to be prepared, better prepared against flooding. Right now, they're saying that a number of them have already identified where their property is located in the flood zone. They've looked at their insurance coverage. And number 3, many of them have not yet taken any actions. So if we move from there into what they would do, the first thing that comes to mind is they really want to have temporary flood protection measures in place. I think this also resonates with the fact they understand that there are extreme events, that there is nuisance or tidal flooding, so they want to be prepared with actual protection. Reviewing their insurance coverage to understand if they are insured in the case of an event. And then the next step, again, permanent flood barriers. What do we need to do to our property or to our community to be better protected? So again, those are the top 3. In terms of a prioritized list of desired preparedness tools, these are all things actually that we're hoping to at least get a framework in place and start to provide. And so it's pretty telling that this is what the community is looking for. They want preparedness and recovery toolkits for property owners and residents. They want the same for businesses. And they really want public engagement events or activities that better prepare them for how to deal with flooding or disaster events. Design guidelines for adapting properties to minimize disaster risk. There is a framework in place in the existing design guidelines that were recently completed, but they're not very specific. It's very general references. So again, I think the community is looking for much more in terms of specifics and for more information on risk, on insurance, on preparedness for residents, real estate professionals, and businesses. So again, those tended to be the top items that the community was looking for. And in terms of incentives, it is not inexpensive to adapt your property to future flooding events and disasters. So many communities are now looking at opportunities for financial incentives for those property owners. We do have a tax abatement, obviously, program, as you had heard here in the state of Florida. We, in my own experience in working in Annapolis, Maryland, we added mitigation and flooding adaptation to our property tax credit. So the ad valorem here could potentially include efforts made to adapt a property to future flood risk. And then when it came down to actual resources, actual places in the community that matter to individuals, the sponge docks rated high. Obviously, the two historic districts right underneath that, City Hall, the Greek Orthodox Cathedral, Craig Park, obviously with the bayou there, Tarpon Springs Cultural Center, the sponge diving boats, and the train depot, as well as the Safford House Museum. All of those properties, the city is really responsible for Craig Park in the area of vulnerability. So City Hall and the cathedral are not within the 1% or the 0.2%, that's the 100-year and 500-year flood zone. So they are not as vulnerable, but Craig Park certainly is, as are all of those properties surrounding it within the historic district. Just a couple of general comments. There were a lot of comments that were provided, but these two kind of resonate in that they cover a lot of the key points that the other comments in the survey made. That it's important to prevent street flooding during high tide and heavy rain. The sponge docks, a huge draw both for local commerce as well as tourism. They encourage tourism. Residents need to rely on the streets, hence why transportation ways were so important to protect. And flooding streets during high tide show a lack of effort to maintain the city. We know there are efforts in place in terms of the stormwater programs, but they're not visible. And again, it's back to public awareness. We need to let people know that the city is working on that. And then again, financial incentives, low interest loans, how can the government assist us, and investing in upgrading in the historic district to contribute to economic development of the town, and making sure that business owners aren't flooded out, that they want to stay. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Linda, who's going to talk about the architectural survey that was completed, as well as some of the vulnerabilities.
Well, good evening, everyone. Linda Stevenson, University of Florida. So I took a look at the architectural resources that are available. Our mission was to actually apply this information to the two historic districts in the city, the Tarpon Springs Historic District and the Greektown National Register District. So essentially, we've identified the historic district and indicated the contributing properties on the map, and then overlaid it with the orange is the 100-year floodplain, basically, and the yellow area is the 500-year, or the 0.2%. So you can see a lot of the local district does lie in that area, and then as you move towards the main street where alternate 19 is, it's kind of outside of that particular risk area, at least through the historic district. So the method that we use is we take a lot of the information that's provided through the GIS, the Property Appraisers Database, plus the state of Florida's historic, the master site file. And we use a system from FEMA. It's FEMA 386, which is a direction on how you apply this criteria for mitigation planning to historic properties. So essentially, it's going to be a very big spreadsheet with the data pulled from the from the property appraiser and from the Florida site file. And we just gather a lot of information. The location of the property itself, when it was built, what type of construction is it? Is it wood frame? Is it masonry? And we take a look at the primary materials on the building. Again, is it wood? Is it stucco clad? Because those have different requirements. We then look at the use of the building, residential, commercial, or other. What condition is it in? And then we rank the property through a series of attributes. So for example, we look at the vulnerability, the location of that property. Is it, again, is it in the 100-year? Is it in the 500-year storm area? We also take a look at the community value, and that's something that comes out of that survey. So for example, the properties that were identified as being high in the survey give us a hint as to which of the properties should be ranked high. And then some of the other properties, by nature of being in the historic district, might take on a medium ranking if they're a privately owned, say, single-family residence, for example. And we look at some other attributes as well. The level of significance of the property. Again, you know, is it locally designated? So that might give it a medium or high ranking, for example. The economic value of that property, a commercial income producing property, may have a higher value as well. We look at the integrity of the resource in terms of its historical integrity. And then all of those numbers get crunched together to create the final column, which is the total level of community value. So that helps us assign priorities to each of these properties. So I just want to quickly run through a few examples of some of the kinds of resources that we see in the districts, and then some of the strategies we might be recommending to you. So for example, a simple small wood frame single-family home like this, there's a whole series of treatments that you could do to protect it, give it a little more additional protection. Something simple might be to simply elevate the mechanical system. The outdoor compressor could be elevated above the base flood elevation. That's a relatively inexpensive kind of solution. More involved would be ultimately to elevate the building, and there's a lot of considerations you'd want to take into account in terms of the adjacency to other buildings. You know, so for example, if you have a series of these little structures along the street, you don't want to suddenly create sort of this accordion effect of some elevated and some not. So there might be a decision to establish a certain elevation for all the buildings to go up to kind of attempt to maintain the character of the original character of the street. And then with that elevation, you might mitigate in front of it. You might need some landscaping to kind of hide a little bit the elevations. I have an example to show you in a little bit here. So in the local historic district, we see a number of again, wood frame structures such as this. And there's also some small masonry buildings mixed in as well. So these can be elevated, but it's a little bit tougher, particularly if it's a clay tile building. It would be a little bit more difficult to elevate that. So there might be some other strategies in terms of how you treat the landscaping, maybe creating some rain gardens or other natural techniques to absorb a little bit of that excess flooding. And then a challenge, some of the mid-century buildings, for example, are built slab on grade. So in the case of a two-story building like this, there may come a point where you need to abandon the first floor, ultimately. So that's another possibility further down the line. Or in the meantime, you could also allow, in case of a flood event, you could allow the water to go through the first floor if it's a masonry building, and the materials down below are such that they are fairly resistant to flooding. So that's another possibility, depending on the way the building's put together. So in the historic district, there is an example here of an elevated building, and you can see it's up several feet above the grade here. And it still looks reasonably intact. And then the same is true of, for example, some of the ancillary buildings would have slabs on grade, like the little garages. in the community as well. And then another thing we're examining is since the historic survey was done, that looked at buildings up to about 1960. There's several other buildings that are a little bit later now, but they are within the 50-year range of being historic. So for example, this apartment building, it could be considered to be contributing to the district now because it was built in 1971. It is over 50 years old, and it's very characteristic of these kinds of apartment buildings that were constructed throughout Florida. But the issue here is, again, the first floor is a slab on grade, so you'd need to develop a strategy to address that, and it could be incremental. It could be you allow the floodwater to go through, and eventually you realize you abandon that first floor. So that is a possibility. And then just taking a look at the Greektown district here, we did a quick analysis of when the buildings were built and then which buildings were contributing to the district here. We overlaid our flood maps again, and you can see that most of that district does lie within the flood hazard area as well. One of the really interesting character-defining features of this community are the low garden walls that surround some of the properties. And one of these, the advantages of these small walls is that they can create a bit of a flood barrier if you, in fact, have a sort of an insert that you could close off the wall, the gap between the walls. So this is actually a very traditional kind of feature that you could expand on further to protect some of the properties in this district, for example. And then, of course, along the docks, which is one of the most significant places in terms of public sentiment towards these resources, the challenge there is many of these buildings are also slab on grade or very close to the grade elevation. So again, for masonry buildings, there is that consideration that you design the interior materials, the flooring, and the wall treatments such that if the building floods, they can be easily repaired. And then ultimately, there is the consideration perhaps of having to abandon that at some point. And there also could be larger scale mitigation projects beyond the individual property owner to help alleviate some of that flooding. And then the last thing we did is we took a quick look at the Union Academy area, and you can see that really the western portion of Union Academy also lies within the flood area. And there's a couple of very interesting structures here. This one is actually a former barracks building that's been added onto. It's on MLK there. And one of the things here is this area is not documented at all in terms of a historic resource survey, so one of our recommendations would be to go ahead and document at least the buildings that are within the flood hazard area in this area. And then this is one of the churches in the area as well. But you can see in this case, there's 2 levels to this church, and the main level is in fact elevated quite well above the grade. So that's just a quick summary of the research that we've done to date.
So this is information that's been compiled and has resulted in what we're going to be speaking to this evening and working with you all to address. In terms of, and I'll go through how we're going to handle this exercise here, because it is 2 breakout groups. But are there any questions that we can answer for the board before we move forward into how we're going to handle the workshop?
Yeah, I've got one. Okay, the flooding we're talking about now is more storm surge, not permanent type flooding. This is all storm surge and where it comes in and then goes out.
Yeah, the tidal flooding that is kind of the nuisance flooding you're seeing is one aspect of it. The second aspect is when we do have extreme storm events and the capacity can't be handled with the existing system. So yes, then you're getting a lot of additional water coming in. And then lastly, and I was just reading actually the Pinellas County hazard mitigation plan. In reviewing that, there is a reference to the fact that there have been major hurricane storm events here, and it's just a matter of time before you get another one. So there's 3 types of flooding events we're looking at.
Well, that's still, a storm surge and a hurricane are about the same thing. You know, what I'm talking about is it comes in, but then it recedes.
Yes, yeah. And in the meantime, it depends on how voracious that storm is and what it does to the buildings. So that's one of the things we're trying to plan for in adapting properties, correct? Okay, I'll go ahead and continue. So as part of this planning effort, and consistent with all other types of resilience or mitigation adaptation plans that are currently in place in the state of Florida, or we've worked on with historic districts throughout the country, we have to develop goals and objectives. You know, what are the strategies that we're going to use, and what are the outcomes we're looking to achieve? They're usually large and intangible and really hard to measure. So you're looking at some big goals we'll be talking about in a minute. But then the objectives are how we get there, how we measure success, how we achieve those specific goals. And there's tasks to be completed under each of those objectives. So the objectives are measurable actions to achieve the goal. The information that you have, I believe, Pat, in front of them, they have this. Okay. You have something that's called a goals and objectives worksheet, as does those individuals here in the public. We normally go through, when we're working with a board or citizens or staff, this exercise. What is the goal that's important to you? What is an objective to accomplish that goal? And what are some of the activities that you need to undertake? The rest of this information is essential, but it's not something we're going to be talking about tonight, because it really comes down to, what do you need? You need money, you need technology, you need staff resources to do this, and then importantly, you need a schedule. This is going to be anticipating that this to be a 5-year plan. So the whole point is, what is reasonable for us as a community working in our historic districts with partners, with our county and state governments? What's reasonable for us to try and achieve? And so that is one of the things that we'll be asking you to think about very seriously as we move forward. And then lastly, we'll be developing a measure of success. What is the outcome, and how do we evaluate the success of that particular project? So I'm just going to run through here and talk about the draft. Again, these are draft. It gives you a laundry list that is based on the workshop information we've received. You won't be able to accomplish all of these. So the idea here is to take a look at it, what seems reasonable to accomplish within a 5-year period. It may be a little stretch that carries over into the next 5-year. And the reason we use a 5-year is Pinellas County's hazard mitigation plan, its local mitigation strategy, is updated every 5 years. If Tarpon Springs wants to achieve some success in getting resources or assistance it needs to accomplish these goals, this information needs to be shared with Pinellas County. It needs to show up in other plans. It can't just be in this plan. It needs to find its way up to where the resources are available to assist Tarpon Springs. So that's why it's so important we align with county and state planning efforts to make sure that the projects here are clearly part of project development moving forward. So here are 6 draft goals. And I will go through each of these. But all of these goals really address the adaptation alternatives that FEMA recommends. It's not always about elevating the building or doing the seawall. There are other things. We learned that the community doesn't appear to be as knowledgeable about how to deal with disaster resilience. So public awareness and education is extremely helpful. It's a great opportunity, particularly when you're working with your emergency management office, to say, listen, we are in this together. We have historic assets we want to try and protect. We have lives, we have properties that we want to protect. And so you have a combined value system for moving forward. Getting historic assets identified as part of it is critical, and Pinellas County is starting down that path by supporting and working with Tarpon Springs on this. So that's why launching a public awareness and education program is a very viable goal, as is adaptation efforts for historic property owners. Again, the toolkit, the first 2 items that were requested was a toolkit for property owners and businesses. Third, working with your leadership, policy. Some policies may need to change to better respond and reflect to the needs of property owners in the historic districts, to heritage tourism needs, to support and sustain the local economy and give property owners the ability to sustain the values in their property. Just getting general information on disaster risk out to the community is an important aspect, as is collecting and sharing all of that data that Linda talked about. You have a terrific GIS analyst. She loves this stuff. She came and participated in the workshop. She wants to be part of the solution and wants to collect all of that data and help the city make better decisions. And then lastly, identifying and documenting culturally significant properties within the flood risk areas. Hence, that's why we talked about the Academy, Union Academy neighborhood, sorry. We drove around there again today and saw a number of resources and did some interviews and really learned from the community, from a leader in that community, what places really mattered. And that's important to document. So not everything is architecturally significant. Sometimes it's about the culture and social value of those places. So let's document them at least, so that if disaster does strike, their history has been recorded, and the places that mean so much to that community are recorded. So that's one of the reasons we're focusing on that area. So here's an example. You all have this sheet in front of you. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it, as do you in your packets. Here's an example. So the goal would be to encourage and support disaster adaptation efforts of historic property owners. Well, how do we go about doing that? Well, we publicize annually a reminder to those property owners and business owners the responsibility they may have for reducing flood risk for their property. We can, as an action item specific to that, we can encourage property owners to install shutters or rain gardens or pervious surfaces and to trim their trees. This is information that came from the workshop attendees. So that's some of the ways they had an idea about how to do it. We can complete a cost assessment. What does it cost to do an adaptation strategy? What do if I want to put flood vents in, or I would like to elevate my building? What's the general cost going to be, maybe by square foot? So there you go. That's something that needs to be determined and used in that toolkit. The city, oftentimes, the city has more control over its property than anywhere else. So do you want to look at maybe a model project? Is there something that resource the city owns that they could go through an exercise even of doing cost estimating for a particular adaptation strategy? Providing illustrated examples of adaptation approaches for historic properties that you can incorporate into your design guidelines or a toolkit for business owners. And then lastly, investigate and publicize adaptation funding sources and economic incentives that Tarpon Springs property owners could utilize. So this was a significant amount of work for that particular goal. All of this information is included on your worksheets, and you all have those worksheets out here now. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these because you can read. That's why you have this. So what I'm going to say is that anything you're seeing, for example, up here in the blue and on your sheet is an action item under objectives and under a specific goal. And so this is the exercise we're going to perform here. These are all there. I don't think I'm missing anything. There we go. You're going to review the goals and objectives where you're sitting. I think, Pat, we're going to have the commission move to the table up there because we've got a flip chart up there. The board. So you're going to review these goals and objectives. You're going to go ahead and select 5 to further develop. Now, that may narrow down. You may select 3, you may select 4, but no more than 5. And these are things that would be put in place and you believe could be implemented over the next 5 years. You're going to prioritize the objectives. So for example, there's 4 objectives listed under adaptation. What's most important, second most important, third most important, that's what you're going to take a look at. And it may be you just say, I only want to do 2 of those. That's it. I think that's all we can manage to accomplish within 5 years. And then lastly, suggest action items under each of those objectives. So if there's an action item you think we can do that, or you said, well, why don't we try this instead, then go ahead and use your worksheet and go ahead and draft that on here. We'll be facilitating 2 different groups. So Linda will drag a flip chart over here and work with the community over here to go through this exercise. And then the board and staff, if we can have you up here, will go through the same exercise. So we're going to take probably about 30 minutes or so to do this. It may be done in 20 because we've kind of got this all spelled out for you. But that's the exercise. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Chair, can I recognize the public? You had a question?
It's up to the board if you want to have any comments from the public. At this point, you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you do, you might want to, and I'm not saying anyone's going to talk for 10 minutes, but you might want to just consider that. If everyone gets up and makes a comment, we might prolong this longer than anyone wants it to be.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a negative way, but I know everyone's getting tired because the first application took so long. So if you do want to allow comments, you might want to limit the time frame. But it's your decision, Chair, you and the board.
We have a question from the audience, Mr. Chair. So,
Were you listening to anything I just said? Were you ignoring me again?
We weren't trying.
He was already filling out his form, weren't you? No, I was just making the point that public comment's not required. I don't know what her question might be, but you may not want to have everybody get up and have comment, but you may. And if you're okay with having question or comments, you might want to consider limiting the time frame within which each person can question or comment.
We need comments. I thought we were going to do the comments in the workshop.
we are. If this is on the instructions and how to proceed, then I think, we need to have clarity to make sure everybody gets the answer to that. I think that's all I'm asking for at this point. If there's any questions on the process. I'm fine. What does she need to come up to the?
The board needs to allow the comments. That's why we're asking you to make the determination. The board needs to say, there is usually no public comment. If you're okay with her asking a question, it's just your choice. Collectively, all 3 of you.
Collectively, all 3. Okay, what do you guys think?
I don't want any questions.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, then come up and ask a
I
question.
think we just need to get into the workshop.
Okay, I'm good. Is this a question we can answer in the group? Okay, then it's the chair's prerogative to make that determination. So
Okay.
that's what it sounded like to me, Madam Attorney. Okay.
That sounds perfect.
All right.
And if for some reason it doesn't work out, we'll figure it out. We'll
Okay.
get back together if we have to.
Thank you. So we'll break you into a group over there. Linda's going to bring the flip chart over there and get started with you. If I can have staff and the board up at the table up there, then we should be set. Thank you all, and I'll do a time call at 8:45, and we'll have you start wrapping up your discussion by that time. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you taking the time and spending a little extra with us this evening.
No. We got to go up there. I haven't closed the meeting yet. It's so irregular. It's like damn teacher when I was young. Okay.
It's on.
It's on right now, we didn't turn it off. Okay. It's been going this whole time. Okay. Just turn it off when it's done. Okay. And then just throw it on my desk.
Going up to Jack.
guys wrap up in the next couple minutes here? Okay.
Yes, that's all.
Yeah. Good. I'm gonna just take this stuff up tomorrow. Yeah. You got a key? Okay.
Thank you. I'll hover. Yeah. Okay. In and out.
That was interesting. God, I thought it would be a lot easier than that.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Nah,
That wasn't that fun.
it was.
I have no issue with how it went at all.
It just, you know, I feel for the guy because, you know, you see the one picture, there was just outside walls.
No, we're leaving. You're leaving. Oh, you're leaving. You know, there was such a backlog. Good part is
Oh, yeah.
it took me 6 months to get my shingles.
I believe it, yeah.
I had to help they adjourned the meeting. Yep, he did, on the tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Well, I'm
Oh,
really,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can we leave? No. Stay up here. Oh my gosh, it's cold.
All right. Well, he'll go in front of the, oh,
Like, as if they had
yeah,
just put a regular shingle roof, we wouldn't have done that.
yeah.
We would have approved that.
right,
Oh, yeah,
right,
exactly.
yeah.